everybody. Welcome once again to the Retro Wrestling Review podcast. This is episode 2, and we are excited to get back into week 2 of January 1993 in the USWA. I'm your host, Gene Jackson, and of course, I'm going to be joined once again by my esteemed co hosts, Richard Mullikan
Hey.
Josh Briley of P3 Radio. Guys, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. Great to be here. Right, talking about old Memphis wrestling.
Yeah,
We're
man.
excited, man.
I just been thinking about this all week, dude. I love watching these older shows that I've forgotten about.
I know, right? Like I enjoy watching this stuff anyway, but when I have like a reason to,
Yeah,
I don't know, it makes it more fun, especially when I know I'm gonna get to talk about it with guys who also enjoy it and also have opinions on it. That's what Ray Russell was telling me. He's like, man, those guys are great. He's like, a lot of times you have people on shows and they're just kind of like, yeah, that was cool, or they don't really have any insight. He said, but those guys, they know the guys, they know the stories, they watched it back in the day because it's really hard for like these young people that go back and watch this stuff out of context and watch 1993 Memphis wrestling with 2024 eyes.
right.
I mean, you can watch it, but without the context of how wrestling was at the time and how Memphis was at the time, it's not the same. You really can't appreciate it. So I'm glad you guys were fans back then and we're looking at this realistically, for lack of a better word. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but
Right.
we've got some context as to how things were at the time, and it's fun to go back and look at it with the perspective of now and go, man, if this was on TV now, how would I feel about it? But that's not a fair question because a lot's changed since then. So,
Right.
anything you guys want to touch on real quick to recap from last week? I think we covered it pretty well, and we will see some carryover from last week into this week. But you guys ready to get going with this one, or is there anything we need to touch on before we move on?
I'm excited to see what's going to happen to Mike Miller this week. I'm just
Who knows, man? Surely
I
him
want
and
to
the
see.
King didn't wind up at another party together or anything like that.
I want to see who's got hair and who doesn't have hair
yeah.
this week. Everybody's getting their head shaved
Yep.
last week. I want to see who's got their hair.
Good point. Well, let's get going here. So this is Memphis TV, January the 9th, 1993. And we're excited right out of the gate because Corey Maclin is back, guys. He was on vacation last week. And this week, Corey Maclin's back. He's happy to be here as always. Dave. And they give us a quick rundown of what to expect today. And then we're off to the ring for our opening match. And we're going to get an answer to your question pretty quickly there, Josh, as Brian Christopher, along with Zeke Rivers, who was already bald from 2 weeks ago, and the newly bald Mr. Clyde are going to be stepping in here to take on Tony Denucci, who we didn't see last week, but he had been in the area a couple of times. A big muscular guy who he's originally from Minnesota. The story is he was trained by Vern Gagne. Now I'm going to be interviewing Tony pretty soon for the show here, so we're going to get into that with Tony and find out a little more about his background. Of his, in 1993, I'm not really sure how long he'd been in the business, so I'm kind of curious. We've all seen the videos of the Vern Gagne training camps, back in the
In the
70s and
barn.
early 80s with, the Sheik and Flair and Patera and all these guys. So I'm kind of curious of what a Vern Gagne training camp might have been in his older years, if it was quite as, rigorous. Any speculation on that?
I don't know, man. I think at that point, Billy Robinson and all those hard nosed guys are probably gone from the teaching camp, But he probably had somebody equally like Brad Reagans or something breaking them guys in down there at that point.
And they're taking bumps with Greg.
And there was Greg and Soldat Ustinov. Let's just hope Buck Zumhoff wasn't there. But anyway,
God,
I told you last week we would talk a little more this week about Mr. Clyde and Zeke Rivers. So we're not going to dive deep, but I did some research on these guys. So Mr. Clyde was an enhancement guy because it's not politically correct in 2024 to say the word jobber. So we'll say enhancement guy. And, we talked about his fun name, the fact, his name's Mr. Clyde. Well, Mr. Clyde is going to be disappearing pretty soon, spoiler alert, and eventually he will resurface with the name Ali bin Khan, which you can imagine the kind of gimmick that'll go along with that. But I think it's an improvement over Mr. Clyde. I don't know. Now, Zeke Rivers was a trainee of Outlaw Don Bass over in Greasy Corner, Arkansas, apparently. He went through the Don Bass training school and did some managing here in the USWA. He actually did some wrestling as Freddy Krueger on some local outlaw shows, as they called them at the time, over there in Arkansas and Mississippi. And eventually, he opened a wrestling school in Mississippi, Natchez, Mississippi, in 2006, and ran a promotion called the Extreme Wrestling Alliance. So I'm sure they did some big business over there with Zeke running the show. So there's a little bit of background on Mr. Clyde and Zeke Rivers. And so we got Tony Denucci here stepping in the ring against Brian Christopher. Like I say, he was trained up in Minneapolis, but he's being billed as being from the Philadelphia area. I don't know if he moved to Philadelphia or if that's just one of them gimmick hometown brothers, but that's where we're saying he's from. Brian Christopher is still billed as the Texas heavyweight champion, although we are long since removed from the USWA in Dallas. But that Texas heavyweight title is still floating around, and Brian is still wearing it proudly. But hey, if Athens, Alabama could have a European champion, they only ran Athens, then by God, Memphis, Tennessee can have a Texas champion, right? I think that's formidable.
Wouldn't it be great if you went back over to Europe anywhere and they were like, the champion, he's from Athens, you know him, you live close to him.
That used to kill me, man. That guy, he had one of those replica European titles. He's like, it's Saturday night in Athens. I'm going to defend the European heavyweight championship against the Russian assassin, and neither one of them had ever been out of Alabama in their life. We got this international flavor down here in old Athens.
I try to keep it on the lowdown because I don't have a working passport.
That's right.
So I'm going to all these countries illegally.
That's all right. We did the drives, man. We used to drive to Europe every weekend to defend this title. All right. So don't question it.
When that land bridge was still down there.
So, because I don't think that would even occur to them, because this is straying way off topic, but I always think of the fact Madman Pondo has a funny story. I don't know if y'all ever watched any $5 wrestling, but Little Donnie, one of the guys from $5 wrestling, found out that Freight Train, the star of $5 wrestling, and if you don't know who these guys are, look them up. It's fun. Memphis Monroe once wrestled there for laughs. But he found out that Pondo was trying to take Freight Train with him over for one of his tours of Japan. And Little Donnie said, hey, I'd like to go too. And Pondo said, brother, I don't think they're going to pay trans for me to bring a bunch of guys to Japan. And he said, that's all right. Me and Big Donnie will drive. And he was dead serious. Not an ounce of irony in that statement at all.
Wow.
But anyway, so Denucci, he has a good look, and this is our first time getting to see him here on TV. And, we talked about last week, we didn't see a lot of wrestling on USWA Championship Wrestling. It was a lot of brawls. It was a lot of run-in disqualifications. So this was a nice change of pace here, as these guys started out with what, you would call probably typically a house show match with the way the match started. I mean, what was your guys' take on that? Is that kind of what it felt like with some of those early spots we saw?
Yeah, man. I was like, they're really getting into it. This is, like you're talking about, it seemed like something you'd see if you bought a ticket to go over here to the gym or wherever to watch just a house show. I mean, structurally, you're right. Like usually there was just a little bit of wrestling, then there'd be a run in or something would happen to stop the flow, or it was just going to be a enhancement talent match and it wasn't going to last long. But these guys wrestled for at least 5-6 minutes straight with no interruption, nothing. And it was leading into a good match.
Here's what got me. And I couldn't tell, like, this is where I got worked. I couldn't tell if they were clunky because of the miscommunication on the floor with the managers, or if they were just clunky because they were just not jiving or gelling together.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like there was a few missed things in there. I'm like, was that missed? Or was that part of the, miscommunication with the managers? Like I still question it now. I was like, even the 2 chains, was that just a happy accident? Or
I
like,
mean, I think that's probably the intended finish for this one,
right,
but that's the beauty of this era of wrestling, though, is you don't always know. There is that shadow of doubt. There is that question, and to me, that's what makes it more fun.
right.
So we got a kind of a medley of highlights of this match. So let's take a look real quick at some of the high spots of this match, and then we'll discuss it a little bit more on the other side.
Boy, this kid is just
something else.
He is something.
Denucci goes in after him and
Yeah.
yes, sir. Christopher kind of turned around and was stunned by a big drop kick from Tony Denucci.
Yeah, that sort of stopped the celebrating a little bit over at his corner.
He backs him up against the turnbuckles. Couple of big shoulders on Tony Denucci. Takes him high reversal here. Christopher into the turnbuckle. Big back drop on him. Takes him down. And Christopher gets out of there. Goes up with Christopher. Christopher backs him up against the ropes. Big knee to the midsection of Denucci. Boy. Takes Tony, whips him into the ropes. Denucci goes under, comes back under again. Sets Christopher, takes him down. Boy, good power move from Tony Denucci. He only got 2, though, there. And takes him down. Here's Zeke Rivers is up on the apron, while Denucci is out in there. Mr. Clyde's got the chair. Christopher telling him to put the chair up so he can use it on Denucci, and Mr. Clyde holding on to the chair. Oh! And Denucci just slams Christopher into the chair. He's got him covered, too. Denucci stands and waits for him. Comes off the rope.
Zeke Rivers tripped him up.
Yeah,
He
Zeke
tripped
Rivers
him
over
over
there. Interfering in the bout. Christopher drops down on Denucci. Covers him, 2. Denucci up at 2.
Denucci able to break out of it.
Chris Rubber with some words with Zeke Rivers and Mr. Clyde. Takes Denucci, slams him down. Takes up Tony. Tony Denucci. Set on Christopher. Slams him right into the referee, Kevin Christian, over there. Christopher calling for the chain. Zeke Rivers and Mr. Clyde both.
Both of them
got
throw a
2
chain
chains
in there.
yeah.
Christopher is saying, hide one. My goodness, he kicked it back, laying right there. But the referee knocked down by Christopher when he threw Tony Denucci into him there. And now the referee steps up and looks over and sees that extra chain and calls for the bell.
Denucci's going to be the winner in there. He gets the victory over Christopher.
1 chain, 2 minutes.
Brian Christopher. I love the way Corey Maclin says Brian Christopher. So, we can blame some of the clunkiness with the valets for some of those spots, but, pretty awkward spot after that spine buster, the awkward pin.
I said, I'm going to pin you.
Yep.
Like this.
It's like he almost forgot. Am I here to fight or make love?
Exactly.
We're going to do something.
Open them legs, boy.
2 Live Crew song, put them in the buck. Like, whoa, that's not how we need to go for the cover there, brother. Come around the side there. So yeah, they had the little bit of awkwardness with that whole chair spot, but that works because of the valets are supposed to be inept and bumbling fools as they're being painted to be. Now, to me, the most awkward thing that stood out to me, and let's see if you guys really noticed this. Brian slams Denucci, I'm assuming, to go for the finish, but then Denucci looks up at him, is like, "We didn't bump the ref."
Yeah.
So he awkwardly has to pick him up and throw him into a side headlock so that then they can bump Kevin Christian and then throw the chains. But it's a fun little finish. I mean, what did you guys think of it overall?
I love how they threw the chains at him. Like, the only time I've seen stuff like that coming is like Mardi Gras, where they're throwing beads at a girl. Like it was like they threw the chains like it was Mardi Gras beads, and it threw Brian off for a second. It looked like he played it off perfectly. Like, what in the hell? You just threw me too? And like, why did y'all both have chains?
We just lost the sound there. Yeah.
I think we're
Sorry.
back.
There we go. I'm making a note of the time, so I know where to go back and make that edit. All good.
But no, like you had two guys there throwing chains at Brian. It was like Brian was like, "Why is there two chains in here?" Like he played it off so perfectly. It was just like, like just the confusion of everything. It was great. I thought they did a really good job.
My only complaint with that whole thing, though, would be like, I felt like he tried to kick it, but he didn't kick it, but maybe a few inches. If he would have kicked it like he was really trying to get rid of it, just a few feet, that would have really put that whole thing, like the whole shock of it all. But that's my only complaint, man. For a studio match, it was a good one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. The best thing we've seen so far. I mean, I know we've only watched 1 week up to now, but yeah, definitely better than anything we've seen. And again, I like the sloppy execution of it works, because even if back then you were smart and you were not gonna be like, oh, it's the old 2 chain spot. Like even then you're gonna be confused, like, what the hell's going on? These guys just hurled 2 chains at him like they were Mardi Gras beads, like you said, Richard. And you're not really sure what's happening. I guess my only complaint, but like, I don't know. My wife even says this when like watching movies and television shows, and I brought this up with Ray on the '85 Memphis show, is I'm overly logical and I kind of nitpick things. The fact that Kevin Christian sees the chain and immediately calls a disqualification is like, just because there's a chain in the ring doesn't mean he hit Denucci with it. And, you automatically jump. I mean, I know Mr. Clyde was sliding in trying to get it, but still, like, there was no, like, did you hit him? He didn't ask the crowd. Normally, you'd ask the crowd, like, did he hit him? They'd be like, yeah. But he's like, chain, DQ, it's over.
Maybe he did that because he had seen the trip right in front of him and did nothing, and he was like, well, I can't be caught with my pants down twice.
True. That's a very good point. So at this point, Brian brings the guys over to the announce desk to berate them for their ineptitude here and costing him the match. And Lauren Davenport, during this match, had come out and she was making notes at ringside. That clip didn't show us that, but before the match got started, as we were waiting for the guys to make their entrance, Lauren Davenport was at ringside. Now, we've seen her around the USWA. She was in and out of the USWA between 92 and 94, I believe, as a manager. She did a little bit of wrestling here and there. But anyway, she's here checking out potential guys to manage. So she approaches Brian Christopher after the match to perhaps replace his 2 valets with, go figure, a female valet. Let's see what Brian's had to say about
this. You are stupid as dirt, aren't you, huh? Are you that stupid? I should have won that match 10 minutes ago, you idiots. I got you 2 lame brains out here to win matches for me. To help me, you understand? Not to screw it up.
Right. I want to tell you, Brian, I'm tired. Ever since you've been with these 2 guys, you've been losing. I know that you're a winner. I know that you can beat Jeff Jarrett.
That's right.
I know you can get your belt back.
That's right.
What I'm going to tell you is, Jeff, I would like to be your valet, Brian, and I will make sure that you win every match you're in, and I'll make sure you get your belt back, Brian.
That's right. So I don't need you anymore, you understand? I got an important match. My hair's on the line. I don't need anybody messing it up for me. Go, get out of here. Lauren, you'll be my valet this week.
Yep,
huh?
you, baby.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
You'll do anything for me.
Anything you want, baby.
You'll do anything for me, Lauren.
Anything.
All right. I want Eddie Marlin out here right now and Jeff Jarrett get out here because this week, Lauren Davenport's going to put her hair on the line for me. Yeah. Eddie Marlin, come on out here.
I said I'd be your valet, and I'd make sure that you won your match. But I can't put my hair up, Brian. No, my hair.
What are you talking about?
I can't put my hair up. I'll make sure you don't lose your hair, but I can't put my hair up, Brian.
You said you'd do anything for me, didn't you?
Anything but put my hair up, Brian.
Oh, my gosh. You're just like every other woman around here. Oh, yeah. Oh, what are you looking at me like that for? You're just like every woman I know. You can't do nothing on your own. Huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, woman. I don't need your woman. All you want to do is be a leech. You want to take me for all my money or something, huh? Just like every other woman.
Oh, man. I love that. So that's been the theme of the previous 2 weeks, is Brian's trying to put everybody's hair on the line, and Lauren comes out and says, I'll be your valet. I'll do anything for you. And he immediately, Lauren Davenport's going to put her hair on the line. So, especially considering like female valets in the 80s and 90s, what's you guys' take of Lauren Davenport, of what we've just seen so far of her here in the USWA?
Well, my first thought was, okay, I'm going to be live on TV Saturday morning. Millions of people are going to be watching me. I better go to my granny's house and borrow her fucking dress. Like I told Richard, like, she's dressed like every other 70-year-old woman of the time. Like they're going to the church potluck or something. She's going to put that dress. I'm sorry, like, it just seemed like, you had Missy Hyatt, Miss Elizabeth, Sensational Sherry, all those women dressed a certain way. You know what I mean? And like
tight black dress.
It just didn't seem like she was trying. She maybe was going for the receptionist look. I don't know, but enough with her, dude. I absolutely love heel Brian Christopher. Like he was one of the absolute best heels Memphis ever had because he was so believable. Like he was the guy that I hated in high school, that rich little punk that would just say anything, do anything to get his way. I absolutely love heel Brian Christopher.
Yeah, I mean, so back to your point on Lauren Davenport, all she needed was a bonnet on to look like a freaking Quaker out here. Like she looked like she just came from churning butter to come out here and try to take on Brian Christopher as his manager. So yeah, it felt super, super out of place and just odd. Her voice is very grating, but I mean, okay, for a heel, I guess that's a good thing. But no, so I don't have a clip of it, but from here, she says, no, I'm not putting my hair on the line. And then like a woman, she's trying to be a leech, and he kicks her to the curb. And Bert Prentice and Mike Samples return, and they say, hey, it's time to get, even though the team's only been split up since last week, they say, hey, it's time to get the team back together.
Nothing's
It's time
changed.
to do this. Nothing's changed. We know the secret. Bert and Mike Samples know the secret to beating Jeff Jarrett. I don't know why they didn't tell him the first week that he wrestled Jarrett. I don't know why they didn't tell him last week. But this week, they've got the secret to beating Jeff Jarrett. Let's get back together. So what does Brian do? He immediately calls for them to put their hair on the line against Jeff Jarrett's title. And to the surprise of absolutely no one on earth, they refused and they walk away. And now it appears that Brian's only option to get his fourth rematch against Jeff Jarrett for the USWA Southern Heavyweight title is to put his hair on the line and potentially look like me once it's over. And people who watch this may not know this, but Richard may or may not look like that under his hat as well. We'll just leave that up to speculation at this point.
Yeah, it's there. Sadly, I lost a hair match with life. Apparently,
Leave town.
I didn't want to leave town. I mean, my body's falling apart. So,
your wife wouldn't agree to put hers up, huh? Like a woman.
Yeah.
You had to put your own hair on the line, and here you sit. You have to wear a hat. I normally wear a hat. I don't know why I wasn't compelled to put one on this week like I did last week, but Here we
Yeah, I
are.
just didn't shave, so the horseshoe on here.
Yeah, see, mine's getting there, but luckily the lighting's bad in here, so you just see a glare. So now we go to a commercial break, and when we come back, Richard Lee, manager of the Moondogs, is here, and he is out here now. This to me, this whole promo and scenario is very ironic in light of last week's episode of this podcast, because folks, if you watched and listened to last week's episode, Richard made it a point to say that, man, these Moondogs are believable because they look like guys who literally just came out of the woods. Like Richard Lee had to go wrangle these guys up out of the woods and herd them up here to the studio to wrestle. And so Richard Lee starts off his promo by saying, the Moondogs aren't here today because they are at the gym. Okay. He says that he has promised Spot and Spike, if they work hard to get ready for what has been deemed their final rematch for the USWA tag team titles, that he would make sure that Mike Samples and Burt Prentice would not be able to interfere. And at this point, after telling us that the Moondogs, Spot and Spike, are not in the studio today, he's here alone because they are at the gym. Mike Samples and company comes out, and this happened.
Manager of the Moondogs, Richard Lee, is here today.
That's right. And Dave, if you've noticed, I'm sure all the people over here have noticed that my dogs aren't with me today. Well, wait a minute. Let me explain to you what's going on. Believe it or not, I've got my dogs in the gym working out. And they're pumping some iron. They're doing it all in the gym. I'm so proud of them.
Brothers, Ron and Don. Your Moondogs aren't here today. They're at the gym.
They're at the gym working out.
Well, that was a fatal mistake.
Oh, hey, come on, Mike.
What a 4 against 1 as they jump Richard Lee out here.
Hey, come on and nail Richard Lee. Bruise brothers, Ron and Don Harris, Mike Samples, and Burt Prentice. Oh, boy.
The Moondogs, Richard Lee has said, are not here. They're in the gym, and these guys,
man.
talk about underhanded, use that opportunity, and they grab the chairs and go to work on Richard Lee.
Boy, that is ridiculous. Get him out of there, Prentice.
Comes Denucci with some help. Here comes the king, and Jeff Jarrett.
Yo, 21 chair salute.
Yeah, I felt like throwback to the Chappelle Show. And one of the most spectacular ass whoopings ever take place on Memphis Wrestling to a manager. He gets a DDT from Ron or Don, I'm not sure which. And then they just take turns going back and forth with a chair on his ass until finally Denucci, Lawler, and Jarrett come out and make the save. And of course, Corey Maclin had to let us know this is ridiculous, and it was ridiculous, Corey. It really was.
I thought when Samples said that's a fatal mistake, I was like, he's just using hyperbole, right? They're not really going to try to murder this man, and then they beat him with 21 chair shots. Like, it was almost as brutal as that scene from The Walking Dead where they beat the Asian dude up with the bat. Like, it was that, like, I'm sure Richard Lee had an eyeball poking out or something after 21 chair shots.
I just wonder, was there something going on that, was bleeding through? You know what I mean? Like, besides Richard Lee from his jacket, like, seriously, was it? Because that's really odd. They're at the gym. It's almost like they got into some kind of argument over the last few weeks. Like, you would think with the Harris brothers, like, why would I sell for them? They look fat and out of shape and blah, blah, blah. They need to go to the gym. And then you get Richard Lee saying, well, they're not here because they're at the gym. And then they beat the living shit out of him on live TV. Like, maybe it was something like that,
It makes you wonder because, I know, wrestling is all predicated on the whole suspension of disbelief, but I think I would have found it more believable if Richard Lee had come out like, hey, man, the Moondogs aren't here. They're at their kid's soccer game this morning rather than they're at the gym, like, They had a morning class over at the college today. They couldn't make it. But,
Learning English.
doing a rare lecture that they like to do over at Cambridge.
They gonna start paying all their bills.
Well, here's a question: where could he have said they were? I guess you know what I mean. Like I was just asking Josh, like
at that
like,
house that they showed
they got
a
loose
year
from
before.
they got loose from their chain. We don't know. We've checked every kennel.
I mean, I went down to the swamp. They weren't where they're usually at. I've got a search party looking for them, and hopefully they'll be there by Monday night.
Yeah.
But at the gym, I mean, look at those guys. Of all the things in the world you could have said.
Right.
Yeah,
They were at the buffet. They were, I don't know. They were at the whorehouse. I don't know.
Can you imagine the amount of terror they're causing at that gym?
Oh,
Because they don't have Richard Lee with them.
They're
So they're just
biting
in there
the
hitting
cords.
people trying to do squats with a trash can. They got that big bone that they're hitting people with while they're trying to bench press.
The manager comes and asks for their like IDs, and they just have to beat the shit out of
Yeah,
him.
that's it. Like, how do they even get into the gym? That's the question. There's so many.
They got their ID in those ratty looking blue jean pockets somewhere.
Just making those faces on the ID because they scan their card and they just see.
On the back of the steel chair, it says members. That's Jude of 92 or whatever spot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all right, if we're going to step out of kayfabe for a minute, I can only assume that Richard Lee had somewhere to be on Monday night and probably come in there and be like, hey, guys, I can't be there Monday night. Like, I got, maybe his kids had a soccer game Monday. I don't know. But they were like, okay, well, we'll just, we'll do a little angle this morning to take you off the card Monday night. And that's what they come up with, was beating the living shit out of him.
He's like, this shit didn't happen to Corey last week when he missed.
Corey's like, the hell it didn't.
They beat me in the back with 27 chair shots. You got off late.
There's a reason I can't get out of this chair today, Richard. But yeah, I can only assume after that segment, Lawler went back there like, anybody else need off Monday? And they're like, no,
No, we're
we'll definitely be there. So we go to a break on the show here, and when we come back, Jeff Jarrett is in action, taking on a guy named J.D. Wolf. Now, I was not familiar with J.D. Wolf, so I did a little bit of research on Mr. Wolf. Do you guys, I'll ask beforehand, do you guys have any prior knowledge of J.D. Wolf?
No.
Nope.
Okay, so the first thing that I found on J.D. Wolf is someone mistakenly said that he was the father of Wolfie D. Spoiler alert, Warren Wolf. Well, it turns out J.D. Wolf's real name's not J.D. Wolf. It's Jim Dean Wolfenbarger, and he's not the father of Wolfie D. Unfortunately, he passed away on March 15th of 2019. But not only was he enhancement talent J.D. Wolf, he had appeared in Memphis wrestling prior. In 1988, Mr. J.D. Wolf was Choir Boy Jim of the tag team The Choir Boys, managed by Brother Ernest Angel, who was coming in to raise money for WrestleLand USA or whatever it was he said he was building. Of course, this was a controversial character making fun of, the preachers of the day, or whatever you want to say, the TV evangelist of the day. Good, better word for it there, Richard. But yeah, he was Choir Boy Jim of the short-lived tag team, the Choir Boys, who probably until Jerry Lawler got hit by a car in the parking lot was responsible for the most complaint calls to WMC of anything they did on the television show. So I understand why we renamed him J.D. Wolf and just didn't mention that when he came back here to wrestle old Double J. But they too had a decent little match. It's almost like somebody came to them after last week's show and was like, hey guys, it's a wrestling show. Maybe we need to do something resembling wrestling this week. So they're like, all right, we'll pull something out in the first couple matches. So let's take a look at a couple of highlights here of Jeff Jarrett taking on not Wolfie D's father, J.D. Wolf.
Puts him down hard. Oh, there's Wolf. And I've given it to the crowd, to the fans here, and climbs up on the ropes outside of the ring. Jeff goes after him. Whoa! Throws Wolf right in the middle of the ring. Goes after J.D. Wolf. Slams him into the turnbuckles. Jeff Jarrett, boy, this guy, some kind of wrestler, let me tell you. He can go. Look at this. DDT on Wolf. Takes him down. Covers Wolf. 1, 2. He got him. And
Yes,
it didn't
indeed.
take him long either. Jeff Jarrett gets the win.
So you made mention last week of the leaping DDT. I think last week's came off better because this one was not. This one was not nearly as well executed as last week's. I don't know if that's Jeff's fault or if that's more Mr. Wolf's part, but not pretty.
We were sitting there wondering, is like, what did the Micro Machines man do that pissed off Jeff Jarrett so hard that he tucked him into that mat softer than I have ever tucked in my kid for bed? And I love my daughter, but like, no, I mean, he kind of looked like a cross between the Micro Machines guy and the Dunkin' Donuts guy. Like, he didn't look like when he went outside to go up to the top rope. I'm like, what in the hell is he doing? like,
I'm glad you said that because I was afraid that was a reference a lot of people wouldn't get because I almost put in my notes that like when he was going to the top rope, he was going for his finish, time to make the donuts. I was like, I don't know, people might not even get that, so it warms my heart that you made that comparison. It's not just me. But.
Yeah, I mean, and the color scheme of his tights look nothing like him. You know what I mean?
No.
It kind of looked like, somebody was leaving the territory and they're like, well, I've got these tights. And he's like, well, it doesn't go with my high school principal gimmick, but I'll wear them. Just let me have them. But no, dude, that DDT is rough. Like, and I don't know if it's on the person that's selling it as much as it is on Jeff, but it doesn't look like Josh said. It was the safest DDT I've ever seen.
No doubt. And I feel like he got there and he's like, guys, my old choir boy Jim outfit does not fit. And for some reason, Tony Falk was there and he's like, brother, I got my boy Tony tights, but they're kind of faded. They don't look as good as they used to. And he's like, bring them on. I'm putting them on. And here we go. Out to TV. So Jeff does a promo after the match. He retained his Southern Heavyweight title last week, obviously. And we're talking about how this week that Brian Christopher's going to put his hair on the line against the title. And lo and behold, Lauren Davenport is not through on her recruitment spree this week on television. Let's take a quick look as Double J gets a pretty sweet burn in on Miss Davenport.
I've beaten Brian Christopher several times, and I don't think I need your help in any way. I've had better I think I've had a better proposition when I've been down on Bill Street. Thanks, but no thanks. Brian Christopher, you're getting your head shaved.
Well, the word from Jeff Jarrett and Lauren Davenport rejected once again.
Hey, Brian, I'm never like that bleached blind punk anyway, and I promise you, he'll get his too.
Jeff has had better propositions on Bill Street. That's a fun line, is it not?
The greatest part was Dave rose his eyebrow like, I know which propositions you're talking about. I get 3 of them a week.
I was going to bring this up later, but we'll go ahead and touch on it here because this, and then again later in the show, this is my new favorite thing that I've never noticed in the past about USWA wrestling. Is Dave Brown mugging for the camera like Jim Halpert on The Office? Look at this. And then later, when Lawler makes a similar statement,
Yeah.
we get it again. And folks, if you're listening to the audio, it's worth finding the video version on YouTube just to see Dave Brown's face. It's just so out of character for Dave. But both times when they said these kind of just looks right at the camera and mugs for the camera, it's my new favorite thing. It's great. Dirty Dave. So Lauren Davenport has now sworn revenge on both Brian Christopher and Jeff Jarrett, who are squaring off against each other. So I don't know if she's going to rappel down from the ceiling like Sting on Monday and lay them both out with a baseball bat or what her intentions are. But she has now been turned down twice so far on today's episode. Is she through recruiting? I don't know. We're going to have to stick around and see. But right now, we're going to take a quick break before we come back to some more USWA action.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jarrett, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
All right, we are back. And yeah, Dave Brown's face after the burn from Jeff Jarrett was fun. So now we get a clip from last Monday night. Of course, you know, the bulk of last week's show. We're telling the story. We're establishing what happened between Mean Mike Miller and Jerry the King Lawler at a New Year's Eve / night after New Year's party.
Depending on who you believe.
Right.
Depending on who you believe. Maybe Mike Miller was so drunk he thought it was New Year's Eve. We don't know.
Maybe
But we
he's
do
been
know.
drunk since New Year's Eve.
We do know that he was drunk. He was assault. He was trying to mac on a lady. Jerry Lawler didn't appreciate it because whoever's party this was, they asked the King to go over and ask Mike Miller to leave. And it ended up with Mike Miller's face getting assaulted. Him spending the evening on his back. He said he rang in the New Year's on his back. Lawler says it was the day after New Year's. So we don't know, but we just know that this meant that they had to have a match last Monday night, and they did. And we saw some highlights of it, and referee Paul Neighbors, every time the King was going to do some more damage to that beautiful face of Mike Miller, Paul Neighbors kept getting in the way. He kept stopping him. He kept pulling him off of him. Meanwhile, Mike Samples is allowed to just interfere at will throughout the match. He's just there, just every step of the way. It was kind of weird. I probably should have clipped it and threw it in here, but I didn't, because I think we'll see plenty of Lawler and Mike Miller as time goes on here. But anyway, long story short, the match ends in a disqualification, and it's also Lawler, was bleeding quite a bit throughout the match, and they announced that Richard Lee is injured, and Jerry Lawler's first order of business when he gets out there, he lets everybody know that he is going to step in as the manager for the Moondogs. Since Richard Lee is injured and won't be able to be there Monday night, he will manage the Moondogs Monday night. He will make sure that Mike Samples and Burt Prentice are kept at bay in the tag team match, the rematch, the Moondogs' final rematch for the tag team titles. So when they show up Monday night, pumped, looking like Lex Luger after spending one day at the gym, apparently,
Right.
Jerry Lawler will make sure that there's no interference. And then Jerry, he addresses what we just talked about, referee Paul Neighbors being a thorn in his side throughout this match. So this week, there's going to be a special referee for this match. Guys, you want to tell us who that special referee is going to be?
I forgot.
Great. You illustrated my point perfectly.
I looked at Josh. I was like, I don't remember.
when they ran the card down, they had said there's going to be a special referee in this match, and we'll announce that a little later on. So to build up suspense, and I guess that shows you how well the suspense paid off, because Jerry Lawler brings out Downtown Bruno to be the special troubleshooting referee, because if you want somebody that's going to lay down the law and make sure that no bullshit happens, who better than Downtown Bruno?
I think the reason I forgot was because he showed up to TV for like literally 15 seconds, right? I mean, he
Yeah.
came in.
Lawler's
gave
like,
a
hey,
wave.
come here. And Bruno comes out. He delivers his line. He manages to get in the line. It's like Mama says, it bees that way sometimes. Boom, he's out. And then we're moving on to Lawler addressing, Mike Miller. And Lauren Davenport shows up for her third recruitment attempt of the show. Let's take a look at how that turned out.
And I would have finished the job at that match, Mike Miller, but it seemed that every time I was fixed to put this fist upside his head, the referee, for some reason, was in there stopping me, pulling me off of him. Well, I'm going to tell you something. You're right, that's right. We're doing a little testifying out here right now, and we're telling it like it is, and I'm going to tell you something else like it is. I ain't going to put up with that anymore. I ain't going to put up with a referee grabbing my arm and keeping me from knocking Mike Miller's lights out, because I went and I got my own referee for this match, and he's a good pal of mine, and he's going to be here. I want to bring him out right now if he would. Just come on out behind that curtain. But one thing I can be assured of, you're not going to be stopping me from hitting Mike Miller, are you, Bruno?
King's Fist, there won't be nobody grabbing your arm, nobody stopping you from punching nobody. You're going to be the man in this match. I'm going to stand back, and just remember, it's like Mama says, it feels that way sometimes.
I would love to do anything that you would like for me to do. I would be there for you, Jerry, and I'll be glad to do it. Anything you want, I'm here for you.
She said anything, didn't she?
I mean anything.
Well, you might have to go to my house or something. They'd like to drop me off or something. You might have to be at my house, right?
Oh, yeah, I'd like that.
Well, let me just say this. Hey, the only problem I can see with that, Lauren, is that if you were to come over to my house, I might have to hang a pork chop around your neck to get my dog to play with you.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think Lauren Davenport's just been rejected again. Yes. No one. Third turns, yeah.
Oh. Tell you something. Now, Eddie Marlin might have said one time that he don't want to hit a woman. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm no Eddie Marlin, and I will take this fist, and I will knock those little pearly whites right out of your head, and they'll be rolling around the floor like chiclets. Do you understand that? Don't ever put your hands on me.
Oh, look out, look out, look out, look out. Mike Miller, Mike Samples, and Bert Prentice jumping Lawler from behind. They came sneaking up as Lawler was dealing with Lauren Davenport, and now look at Miller going after him here, and with help from Samples and Prentice. Yeah. Here comes some help in the form of Jeff Jarrett.
So if you're not watching on video, folks, and you really should go back and watch the video of this, or at the very least, click the link and watch the entire episode. So just to recap, our hero, our babyface, biggest babyface star in Memphis wrestling history, Jerry Lawler, admittedly was getting physically assaulted by Miss Davenport, and so he decided to handle it, and it gets all over.
You know, my first line of defense when a woman's hitting me is the serial killer choke.
And he shuts it down.
Yeah.
And so, he's in the middle of telling her how Eddie Marlin might not hit a woman, but by God, if she wants to lay a hand on him, he'll knock her teeth out, and they'll be rolling around the floor like chiclets. And then the villains of the piece, the bad guys, the guys we're supposed to hate, come out and interrupt his potential assault of this woman and attack him. The low-down rat bastards they are. We said last week that at times, this is 1993. There's going to be some things that don't necessarily age well. There's going to be some things that, it was a different time. Well, this is definitely one of those things, but I don't even know if in 1993, even Dave got pretty uncomfortable there when he grabbed her. He's like, hey, whoa. He even stopped mugging for the camera at that point. Like, hey, all right, now this is getting a little too... we're not, the king's not on trial here. This was 1993. It was what it was back then. But, I mean, what are you guys... What are your guys' thoughts coming out of this as the baby face is about to knock a woman's teeth out and the dastardly heels come out and stop him?
It's not only that. This is right after he says, I need my own referee because the referee in the last match wouldn't let me punch my opponent in the face as much as I wanted to. It's like, that's a heel move, like the referee's bias. It was the Terry Funk empty arena match. The referee's biased against me. The crowd's biased against me. He's supposed to be the baby face. And he's assigning a referee, a special referee that will be on his side.
And who famously had been a heel manager most of his career, most of his life.
Right.
He's known to be underhanded, and that's who his troubleshooting referee is going to be.
And then he's threatening to punch this church lady dress wearing woman in the face just because she gave him a few. Those were those shoulder workout slaps that your mom might you did something wrong. Your mom's like, stop it. That was all that was. And we've all taken them. It wasn't doing any damage. And then Lawler, like, I'm pretty sure that was an assault.
Yeah.
Like
100% it was. But Memphis wrestling, more so it seemed than other wrestling promotions growing up.
Look at Corey's face.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no, Jerry.
Memphis wrestling showed us, I think, though, more so than any other wrestling promotion that, yeah, you're not supposed to hit women, but if they're a bitch, you can just do all kind of shit to them and still save face. Like, you're still the good guy because she's a bitch.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of.
You don't hit a woman first. But if they hit you, game on, pal.
Yeah, you give her.
You do what you got to do.
You pull the ball to spank that fanny.
I'm thinking at least 5 shots that do no real damage to yourself before you give her a haymaker right in the face to knock her teeth out.
Don't make me go get the phone book, lady.
Oh man.
And hey, I mean, I love Lawler. He's one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. We're having fun. But admittedly, I'm sure if the King was here with us, he'd probably say this isn't one of his proudest moments.
Well, honestly,
like a highlight of.
I think at that time period, they probably just did it for the shock value. They were trying to get what was that next big aha moment,
Well, Bobby Heenan also said in his book that he preferred male managers to female valets just for this very reason. It's because you can knock a man silly, but as soon as you put your hands on a female, you get those mixed reactions. Like, you always have that one woman, he shouldn't have done her like that. I don't care what she did. He should not have hit that woman in the face and knocked her teeth out. That is a woman. That's the difference in having female valets and male managers. Just because you can get your shine back on them. You can beat them up and it doesn't matter.
And let's remind everybody, this isn't unique to Jerry Lawler. The biggest hero of the 80s, Hulk Hogan, beat Sherry Martel. I mean, whipped her around like a rag doll. He beat the brakes off Sherry Martel at the end of almost every match he had with the Macho King. Atomic dropped her and threw her over the top rope. I think he threw her in the cage on one. I mean, like, he was supposed to be the real American hero. So, like I say, it was a little different time back then. But talking about shock value, let's hear a few words from Mike Miller, our old pal Bert Prentice, and I got another screenshot for you that you should enjoy, or it'll shock you anyway. Let's take a look.
You think these fans gonna stand behind you? You gotta be crazy. I tell you what, somebody to jump this beautiful woman, Lauren Davenport. Me and her have been up and down the road together. She's been in my corner before. Lauren, baby, you see that right there? You see that, Lawler? You tasted this. You know how it tastes, brother. And I tell you what, we're going to end this once and for all. The whole world's talking about me having to wrestle a lady wrestler. Well, don't worry about it, because we're talking about Bubba Johnson, Mr. Texas himself.
Oh, come on.
You know he had a sex change. I was in Dallas, Texas last week and found the doctor that did the surgery. And Eddie Marlin won't let me produce him because he's in bed with Miss Texas probably at this very minute.
Stop that.
I fought meaner men than you, Bubba Johnson. She's a sick human being. The hormones, testosterone, Tessie, I'm coming. Her body's falling so fast her gynecologist wears a hard hat. And I'm telling the truth. Miss Texas.
Wait. What's going on? That's enough, Bird. What's going on here?
You watch yourself. Hey, this ain't nothing but a business deal. Oh, you were all over him, kissing on him.
Leslie Ballinger.
Leslie, baby, don't be upset, baby. Just hang on.
Don't tell me not to be upset. You watch yourself. He's probably tired of carrying that big load of yours around. Big load.
Look out.
There you go, Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport. I don't know, Dave.
Ask you something. It's okay. Have this fight out here. Do you want to fight this?
Yeah, I'll fight that heifer. I want to
All right, they both want to fight it, Dave. Sign the match, but we're not going to have it out here. Get her out of here. Get
Match is going to be signed.
Is heifer a bad word?
I don't know. They seem more offended by that than anything else we've seen today.
Yeah.
There,
Dave was like, whoa,
whoa. Watch it, bitch. I mean, so if you took the last 30 seconds of that clip and just showed somebody randomly without any context that this is a wrestling show, they would think that the fight broke out at a parent-teacher conference. Like it looked like somebody's redneck mom beating up the teacher. You gave her an F? Oh, hell no. And then they go to the floor fighting. But if you want the most disturbing image that I think you'll ever see on a professional wrestling show, look at
that. That's the librarian thank you for returning these books early. Thank you so much.
I mean, Mike Miller, bless his heart, looks like something out of a horror movie.
I tell Richard he looked like a gargoyle.
He does. And then this librarian is like, oh my gosh, that is so disturbing.
Like, speaking of like the church thing, it looks like the rough redneck biker came down and gave his heart to Jesus. And the church lady's hugging him like, you did so well today.
Jesus loves you, and I do too, honey.
I smell that sin on your breath, that alcohol. I still love you.
It's never too late. So, all right, let's take a step back. Let's look at Lauren Davenport's story arc of this one. And this is one of the things I love about USWA, because things can escalate in the course of one episode. So we begin the episode. Lauren Davenport's just some chick at ringside with a notepad, recruiting, looking for a wrestler to manage. She goes after Brian. She gets shut down. She goes after Jeff Jarrett. She gets shut down. She goes after Lawler. She gets shut down. She's making out with Mike Miller on screen. Leslie Ballinger comes out and like, oh, hell no. It turns into an episode of Jerry Springer. They're rolling around on the floor. And by the end of the episode, she now has a match against Leslie Ballinger set up for this week. And it's like, okay, like she gets thrust through interactions and 3 different promos. Now all of a sudden she's having a match against another heel Monday night. Like, it used to amaze me how these kinds of matches would just spring up like this. It's kind of weird how their mind even works. Like, all right, so we got this Davenport chick. We need something for Ballinger to do, because we're going to have Miss Texas in a single match with Burt Prentice, because that sounds like a great idea. What are we going to do? Well, how could we get those two in a match? Well, what if, I mean, how you get to point A to point B and making that match even happen is pretty astounding to me. You know, like that's a pretty big leap. But it works, and in being Memphis wrestling, like watching it at the time, it didn't even seem that far fetched. It's just like, well, yeah, of course she's mad that she's trying to. But when you look at Mike Miller and like 2 women are going to have a match on Monday night, and the premise is they are fighting over Mike Miller, not who has to be with him, who gets to be with him, and we're supposed to want to buy a ticket to that.
Yeah, it was all that camera time from last week.
That's the most white trash shit ever, dude. Like that's.
And I think the funniest thing about the whole Mike Miller situation is going back. I didn't remember him before we started doing these shows. Now I have seen 2 weeks from Mike Miller. I've seen one match and then one Monday night, at the Coliseum replay. I have not seen one legit wrestling hold from Mike Miller in the 2 weeks that I've been watching him. It's all been punches.
Yeah. I mean, there's no evidence by anything you've seen of Mike Miller to this point that he's ever been trained to be a wrestler.
Yeah. Getting hugged by that lady there at the end was the closest I had seen to him having a hold executed on him or executing a hold on someone else. And it was the weirdest. I was like, he's only punched and loved on this show.
That's a good point. I would love to have seen like somebody take the tape of this episode to Vince McMahon and let him watch it and be like, so what do you think of how they set this ladies match up? And I'm like, what the hell is this shit, pal?
Yeah.
They're fighting over that guy? What the fuck? Like, it's so crazy. But that's Memphis, man. Again, we're not here to shit on it. We're here because we enjoy it. But man, it's wild how they get there. There's an episode that I can't wait to cover, and Lord, it's a long way in the future, but in like 96, where an episode begins with Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert are the babyface USWA tag team champions. And by the end of the episode, Tommy Rich is challenging Lawler for the heavyweight title in a singles match. There's been a promo out there with Gilbert and Lawler. PG-13 are now the tag team champions. Like, it's just, if you take everything the way it is at the beginning of the episode, if you were just go, here's the card for Monday night, and you look at the way everything was when you started the show, like, how the hell did we get there? Like,
Right.
Tommy and Doug are the babyface tag team champions. How are we getting to Lawler and Tommy Rich in a singles match with Rich as the heel and PG-13 are defending? Just watch the show. You'll see.
Yeah.
We'll get
And you know what's funny about all of that? The person who is the most clairvoyant is the person who puts all those graphics together. They're like, you know what? I have a very funny feeling that
I know this seems odd, but trust me,
Yeah.
this is going to come together. This is definitely going to come together.
I run a 1-800 psychic number in my spare time, and I do these things for Memphis Wrestling where I make graphics ahead of time so they can put them up.
So, we've talked about how in this episode, compared to last week's episode, we've actually seen a couple of wrestling matches, matches that had some wrestling involved. They resembled a wrestling match. Well, we're done with that.
Yeah.
Because now it's time for the USWA Tag Team Champions, the Bruise Brothers, Ron and Don Harris, to take on Ricky Hayes and Sam Norris. And let's take a look at some quick highlights of this.
I see him, and then Mike Samples behind him carrying the World Tag titles. Bert Prentice is in the corner, too. And they immediately jump their opponents, Ricky Hayes and Sam Norris, as Mike Samples brings the championship belts over here, saying, take good care of these. They immediately have Sam Norris thrown out of the ring. Look out.
Look out. Yeah, there goes Norris over our table. These Bruise Brothers, well, let me tell you, these guys. Bruise Brother picks Ricky up, slams him down hard, covers him. 1, 2, 3, now they can get out. Oh, no, but the other Bruise Brother comes over, yeah. And now Sam Norris here outside of the ring.
Norris just about to get back on his feet after being beaten up by one of the Harris brothers earlier. They pinned Ricky Hayes, and then they came right back after Norris. Now they're both working on Hayes. Prentice, oh, yeah, we'll call them off. Come on, for heaven's sakes. This is just ridiculous.
Man. This is ridiculous. Let me tell you.
This is that very thing that...
Come on, Prentice and Samples, get these guys out of here.
Moondogs had a patent on this kind of stuff. You're crazy. The Moondogs could learn something from these guys.
Get them out of here, would you?
It looks like these guys learned stuff from the Moondogs is what it looks like as they continue to work on Sam Norris and Ricky Hayes. Here's Eddie Marlin out trying to restore some order. And again, Corey, I want everybody to notice it's 4 against 2.
Get Eddie Marlin out of here.
Boy, let me tell you.
Eddie's trying to get the hair.
Yeah. Yeah.
They whooping that man's ass inside the desk.
Why did Mr. Norris keep getting up? It was like he got hit 3 times with a chair and then just got up. Like, yeah.
It was ridiculousness. So Norris, I know the Wish app wasn't a thing back then, but he is definitely, if you had ordered Macho Man on the Wish app, that's what would have showed up. Look at that outfit he had on. That's tremendous. But, oh my God, like, so you texted me the other day, how many chair shots did that poor guy take overall? Like, I mean, not as many as Richard Lee, though. I think that's what he's referring to was as you put it, the 21 chair shot salute. But between and he's over there swinging it at Ricky Hayes as the one Harris guy's like trying to take him away, and the other's just following behind, whacking him. Then he turns around and goes back to whacking Sam Norris. Like, I think they outdid the Moondogs on dangerous random chair shots on this episode of USWA Wrestling. I mean, good grief. It was brutal. Absolutely freaking brutal.
What was funny was at the end of that clip, you saw either Ron or Don even feel bad about what he was doing because Mr. Norris got up and all that was open was his head for that chair shot. And the Harris brother was like, look, I can't hit you in the head again. He pushed him over and hit him in the back. I'm like, it's bad when you put an ass whipping on somebody so bad that you feel bad about them mid ass whipping.
Exactly. He's like, all right, I'm not that merciless. Poor guy Chance here. So that's what capped off another wild episode of USWA action. So let's let Dave run down the card for Monday night coming out of today's TV and see what all this was building to if we didn't catch it along the way.
Let's take a look at the card coming up. Monday night, Mid-South Coliseum, 7:30 is the time for all of it. Opening match of the night, Danny Davis will be going against Terror number 2. And that's just the opener. Following that, you got Tony Denucci going against Jeff Gaylord. And the Missouri Tiger going against Denucci. Danny Davis will take on Terror number 1 also. Now, he's got both of the Terrors in single matches, beginning with Terror number 2 and then coming back against Terror number 1. Bert Prentice will be going against Miss Texas. Prentice can come out here and make all the goofy accusations he wants to, but the fact is he's going to have to step in there against Miss Texas, and it may be a mighty long night for Bert Prentice before all is said and done. Tag titles will be on the line. The Harris brothers with Mike Samples, and boy, I never thought I would say this, but I sure would like to see the Moondogs get after Ron and Don Harris and get those belts away from them. They have been just terrible as they have come in here under the tutelage of Mike Samples and Bert Prentice. The Moondogs, we don't know if Richard Lee is going to be able to manage or not. Matter of fact, Jerry Lawler says he doesn't think so, so he's going to be in the corner of the Moondogs as the tag titles will be on the line. Then Lawler will be in a match going against Mean Mike Miller. Special referee downtown Bruno has been signed for this one. That should make for an interesting evening for the King. Following that, you got Brian Christopher's hair finally at stake. The Southern title will be at stake on Jeff Jarrett's side. Jeff, the holder of the Southern heavyweight title now. He won it from Brian Christopher. He has been able to defend it. Christopher has paraded all of his people out here and gotten their head shaved. Well, the time has come, and it is Brian Christopher's hair that's going to be on the line with no time limit, no disqualification. And I tell you what, Lauren Davenport is not going to be in the corner, and he said he doesn't want Mike Samples and Bert Prentice in the corner.
All right, there you see the card. That's what this all has been building towards. And now's the time that we're getting ready to go and take a look at what took place that night after the TV show in Nashville. And then we're going to head over to the Coliseum. But first, we're going to take a quick time out for some promotional consideration, as Lord Alfred Hayes used to say. And we'll be right back to find out how the card turned out on Monday night at the Coliseum.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Pro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up and coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
All right, guys. So before we're able to head to the Coliseum for the Monday night show, as we talked about last week, we got to go to Nashville and do what we did last week at the Coliseum somewhat. So let's see if it turned out exactly the same. So 500 people showed up at the Nashville Fairgrounds to see the opening match. Burt Prentice and Leslie Bellinger defeated Miss Texas and Eddie Marlin in a mixed tag team match, I should say. Danny Davis defeated the Master of Terror #2 by disqualification. Jerry Lawler beat Mike Samples in a boxing match by disqualification. Jeff Jarrett defeated Brian Christopher to defend the Southern Heavyweight title with no mention of any hair being on the line because, obvious. USWA Tag Team title match, Lumberjack Chair match. Ron and Don Harris went to a double disqualification with the Moondogs in a Lumberjack Chair match. All right. And then in the main event, Mean Mike Miller defeated Jerry the King Lawler by disqualification. So if you're keeping score at home, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 matches. That 1, 2, 3, 4 matches ended in a disqualification. That's a lot, guys. It's a lot of disqualifications.
Yeah, and in some matches that weren't even disqualification wasn't even possible.
Yeah, I don't know how you get double disqualification in a lumberjack chair match, but they figured it out. I did notice. This may have just been a oversight or something, but up to now, these guys have been the masters of terror. But when Dave ran down the card, they were just terror #1 and terror #2. I don't know if they've been stripped of their master degrees, or if they've just decided that they're not masters of terror. They're just okay at terror.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They didn't get enough credit hours this week to be masters.
Well, by the looks of things, that may be the fact. But they do hold the final victory over Superstar Bill Dundee at the Mid-South Coliseum in his not quite very last match. His last match for a while. We'll give him that much anyway. So now, let's see what this was all about. Let's see what took place on Monday night, January the 11th at the Mid-South Coliseum. Now, I know we put a lot of emphasis last week on what a drop in attendance we took from the last weekend in December to the first weekend in January. Well, unfortunately, I have scoured the internet. I've asked around. No one has the exact attendance for this card, but they said it was probably close to the same or maybe a little less than the week prior. So we're trending down, guys. Let's see why. In the opening match, Lauren Davenport went to a no contest with Leslie Bellinger. In the second match, Danny Davis defeated Master of Terror number 2 via disqualification. In the third match, Tony Denucci beat Jeff Gaylord via disqualification. Miss Texas in the fourth match beat Burt Prentice by disqualification.
Yeah.
In the fifth match, Moondog, Spot, and Spike actually defeated Ron and Don Harris and won the USWA Tag Team Championship. Jerry Lawler defeated Mike Miller with special referee Downtown Bruno. And in the main event, Brian Christopher defeated Jeff Jarrett and won the USWA Southern Heavyweight title and saved his hair. And we'll have to tune in next week to find out exactly how. We don't have the details on that. But, guys, I want to ask you, usually, like last week I asked you before we ran down the card, this week I want to go ahead and talk about the Nashville show, talk about Monday night show, and kind of take all that into consideration before I ask you today's questions, because these questions are going to kind of encompass, I know we didn't actually see those shows, we heard the results, and we watched the TV. So, overall, from the things we covered in this episode, what was your least favorite part of the show?
Well, my least favorite part, again, I think it was the least favorite part of last episode, was the Harris Brothers stuff. I mean, it didn't seem as important again, and it was really quick, but I don't know. It kind of like, as a kid thinking back, it kind of angered me that they were trying to do basically the Moondog stick, like the last couple of weeks that we watched. And it just felt like, and I still feel that way, that's the Moondogs thing. Like, if anybody's out there using chairs and weapons and stuff, they kind of got that cornered. Maybe they should have done something different. But as a kid, it was a turn off and kind of just, I don't know. I just could have done without it.
For me, it was the lack of matches. You know what I mean? Like you said, it's a wrestling show. When I was a kid, I thought the interviews that they all did, I always just, I tuned out of those. So for me as a kid, to see 2 matches in that time period, I would have been livid that we didn't see more action in the ring. And as a fan now, I want to see more wrestling.
All right. And so the second question is, what was your most favorite part of the show?
So if I'm finding something positive, the commercials were a great flashback to when I was a kid. It got me in that mindset of the show. But I can't choose the commercials. So what we'll say, my favorite part of the show was Brian. And once again, Brian, being heel Brian. Having the chains fly in, having that match that you're like, that was a little weird, but it fit. And then hearing him, call everybody out that he wanted to manage him, it was just like he believed in what he was saying. And Brian was definitely my favorite part.
Josh?
Mine was just the whole Lawler segment. He come out, he's got COVID or whatever was before COVID, he had it. And Dave was like, he said, "I'm sick." Dave backs up, and it's like the interview was even like slow starting. Lawler's like, "Oh, I'm sick." And he starts slowly getting into what he's saying. And then by the time the interview's over, like, wow, he had fired up. Leslie, Lauren Davenport had come out there, and just that whole thing with Lauren Davenport getting the choke, and Lawler's, I'm not Eddie Marlin. I'll knock the shit out of you. And it was so, again, it felt so real. And honestly, man, like, looking back, I was always looking for stuff like that to talk about at school. The next week, like, did you see what Lawler did? That was, that was always just the big exclamation point of the show was, it was always one, it seemed like, and Lawler had that one, man. It was just, that whole thing was awesome.
I told Rosie going into this, I'm like, I'm going to count on Josh being the one to say his favorite part of the show is when Lawler was going to beat up that chick, and you said it in a lot more appropriate way. So thank you for that. You came through. I knew I could count on you. Awesome. And so the third question, as before, as it will be every week, if this was actually 1993, would today's television, and let's say, we're gonna take these as if you're a fan. Let's just say you're in Memphis at the time. So let's say, you guys were fired up to go to last week's show based off last week's TV. You wanted to go see Bill Dundee's last match. So say you went and saw that show, and you saw these freaking disqualifications and all that. So keeping that in mind, and then sitting and watching today's television show in 1993, would you have been compelled to go buy a ticket and see this Monday night show?
This would have been one of those shows that I'd want to skip. Because we've already seen, there's not really any new matches here. We've already seen 3 of them are rematches. The women's match does nothing for me because it was thrown together towards the end, and I don't care who wins Mike Miller's hand. I mean, and as a kid, I would have thought, well, why do I want to go see your main event? Brian Christopher's just going to get beat again. As an adult, I know, well, he's got to win. So either way, there's no shock for me. It would have been shocking as a kid to see it. This would have been one of those shows that somebody would have given me tickets and I would have probably thought about going or not. You know what I mean? Like it would have been grandma got me tickets to this show. Do I go? It wouldn't have been something I would have went out and bought.
Josh?
Well, for me, I enjoyed hating Brian so much. And, week after week after week, he's just offering up everybody but the janitor's hair. And you could tell this week it was like that was his last straw. He has nobody else. He's burnt through every option that he had available to him, being just that devious user and abuser. And it's like something's got to happen, and I want to see this son of a bitch get his head shaved. I mean, he's got all these other people's head shaved. He's not going to beat Jeff Jarrett, and so I would have wanted to go just to see the end result of that match.
Exactly, because, and clearly that's the booking strategy here. That's why suddenly Jeff and Brian are on last. After Lawler, after the Moondog Harris brother craziness, we are banking on. We have established the last 3 shows that Jeff Jarrett beats Brian Christopher despite interference. So this time he has nobody to help him in theory. We're banking on everybody showing up to see Brian get his head shaved. That's what we're hoping, because we've really put nothing else in place on this card.
Right.
That really is going to, like you said, an angle that developed over the course of the show. I'm not invested. I don't think anybody in Memphis or within driving distance is going to be invested enough to see who wins the love of Mike Miller to go want to see that match. We've seen Danny Davis and the Masters of Terror go on for months now in tag team matches. Lawler and Mike Miller, more of the same. Downtown Bruno's a special referee. We know Lawler's probably not going to get beat 2 weeks in a row. But as a booker, we're not dealing with people who are in 2024 who now are wrestling strategists who are like, all right, based on booking theories and how, this would be the week that Brian has to win because we've had him lose, 2 weeks in a row. And Brian's, Jerry's son's not going to lose his hair. They're not looking at it like that. They're looking at the way Josh laid it out, where, all right, we've established he can't beat Jeff, and now he has no help. I'm going to see this guy get his hair cut. So I think that's what they were banking on here. That was probably a slim premise to sell it on, but we didn't have a lot to work with here. Obviously, the roster, when you're putting Leslie Ballinger and Lauren Davenport in a match to open the show, clearly they do not subscribe to that theory of you open the show hot, you come in with a great match to get things kicked off, because they put the weakest match on the card. You got 2 Danny Davis Master of Terror matches. Why wouldn't you have put one of those on first? Because at least Danny Davis and Ken Wayne can have a good match. I mean, even if the angle is beat to death and we've seen it, they still have the capability of having a good match. in no way possible was Ballinger and Davenport going to have anything resembling a match, much less a good match. So, wow, what an awful way to kick the show off. and then, and then it possibly tapered off from there. I don't know. But I'm with you guys. This is definitely a show that I would have been like, I think we can skip this one. I would love to see Brian get his head shaved, but I don't know if I want to sit through everything. Just what I don't understand, though, is like, why is Tony Denucci beating Jeff Gaylord by DQ?
Right.
Why are we not just having a finish in that match? Why is Danny Davis beating Master of Terror by a DQ? Why is Miss Texas beating Burt Prentice by a DQ? Like, all these DQs, like, good Lord. But of all the matches on the card, there's no reason Tony Denucci couldn't just straight up beat Jeff Gaylord, or vice versa, or Gaylord just beats him. Why another disqualification? I do not remember, because like I said, we're going through the same thing over on the Memphis 1985 show on the regional wrestling series. These cards have got just tons of disqualifications up and down the card. And I was telling Ray before we got into watching these USWA shows, like, man, I don't remember the Memphis shows being plagued with all these non-finishes. And then we jump into this, and you jump from 85 to 93, and we're doing more of the same. I'm like, well, maybe I just don't remember that. Maybe that is how Memphis worked. Maybe it is always a bunch of DQs and non-finishes. And we're gonna see as we move along, because we're committed to the project. So we're gonna see where these roads take us for next week. For folks listening, I mean, I know we got some fun stuff ahead as USWA starts working with the WWF and Vince starts sending down. We start seeing some big name stars that as we move along in '93. Sure, we start out with Doink the Clown and Giant Gonzalez. We're gonna have Bret Hart. We're gonna have Owen Hart. We're gonna have the Undertaker. Some of the very tippy top stars of the WWF are going to be coming to Memphis, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch it unfold. I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm certainly looking forward to it, and I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how we get from where we are now to moving to something that starts putting some butts back in the seats over at the Coliseum.
I'm ready to get away from Mike Miller.
Man, when you're hanging your hat on Mike Miller being the draw, it's hard times. I mean, Dusty Rhodes could have mentioned that in his promo. Like, maybe when Mike Miller is the main event in the Mid-South Coliseum, that's hard times. Like,
I'm down with kings and queens, and I watch Memphis try to put Mike Miller over as a top heel.
No doubt about it. Well, all right, guys, another fun episode. Before we go, folks, a couple of quick things here. Be sure to check out all the great podcasts over on WrestleCopia.com, where you found this one. Lots of great content. Join the WrestleCopia Patreon. Man, I mean, for $5 a month, Ray gives you all sorts of great stuff. You got video podcast, you got regular podcast, you got all his show notes with all the research that he does. You've got tons of like old school wrestling magazines scanned where you can go through and look at and read the old wrestling magazine. That's one of my favorite parts of the website. Brings back, I've got half of them in a closet somewhere at home, but I don't have to dig them out. I can just click around and look at them in my phone. I'm bored at work. So make sure you join the WrestleCopia Patreon. Check out WrestleCopia.com. Check out P3 Radio. These guys have a hilarious podcast they do every week. Once again, tell them how they can find it, guys.
Go ahead, Josh. You're our plug guy.
Well, on Twitter, we are at P3 Radio, the number 1. On Facebook, Pop Poncho, Poncho is the way you spell Poncho. And the old school way, just text us, leave us a voicemail, whatever. 24 hours a day, 731-300-6675.
And you can listen to our show on any podcasting app, iTunes, Spotify, just by typing in P3 Radio, all one word, like you see on our name right here.
There you go.
There we go. Yeah.
There you go. And of course, we have a Facebook.com/Retro Wrestling Review. We also have a Twitter, Instagram, and a TikTok at USWA Podcast. We've been putting a lot of stuff up over there, so make sure you check that out. And we have a store. You can go to tinyurl.com/retro wrestling review. We've got t-shirts like the one I'm wearing right now. We've got some other fun designs that I'll share with you here on the screen. You can go there now and check them out. We're going to be adding new stuff all the time. We've got a Moondog shirt over there. We've got a Jobber shirt. We've got a shirt with all sorts of old school wrestling logos, Mid-South Wrestling, CWA, USWA, all these different old school wrestling shirts. So if you want some old school wrestling merch, that's the place to check it out. So go help support the show, because podcasts aren't free. These guys know that. It takes some money to make all this stuff happen. So check it out. And again, check out WrestleCopia.com. Check out the guys. P3 Radio, you can search for them, like you said, on any of the podcast platforms. This show is on all the different podcast platforms. If you're listening to it audio-wise, you can check out the video version on the WrestleCopia YouTube channel. You can find that at WrestleCopia.com rather than me trying to tell you the URL and you try to remember it. It's easier just to go to WrestleCopia.com. And also, I have a YouTube channel for this show, youtube.com/Retro Wrestling Network. There are over 1,000 videos on that channel now, including every episode of the USWA that's available known to man from 1990 straight through 1997. And each week, when me and the guys are watching these episodes, that's what we're watching them from, that YouTube channel. So if you want to go and subscribe, we have USWA, we have 80s Memphis wrestling. We've got every kind of old school wrestling you could name. You go search that YouTube channel. If you like wrestling, unless it's new wrestling, then you're a shit out of luck, because I don't put any of that on there because I don't watch it. But if you want old school wrestling, there's literally any and everything you could think of, and we're adding new stuff all the time. So please subscribe to the YouTube channel. And like I say, watch these old shows with us, man. Don't just take our word for it. Don't just watch the little clips we show. Go through and watch the show and let us know what you think. Go to the Facebook, go to the Twitter, and tell us what you thought of these episodes, and tell us how you like the podcast. If there's anything you would like to hear us talk about or not talk about, or hey, do more of this, do less of this. I can't promise you we're going to do all of it, but we would love to hear from you, and we would love to try to make this podcast what everybody wants it to be. So we're just here to have some fun and teach you things, like Zeke Rivers was trained by Outlaw Don Bass and had a wrestling school in 2006 in Natchez, Mississippi. And if you've ever seen any Mississippi wrestling, then you know why.
This man was paying athletic commission fees.
That's right. That's how you know he means business. You know he's legit if he's paying for those athletic commission licenses, because we know those are certainly legit, right, guys?
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thanks for watching, and we will be back soon with another episode, week 3 of 1993 in the USWA. And also, I will be having a conversation with Mr. Tony Denucci that you saw in this episode, Wrestling Brian Christopher. We'll talk about that match. We'll talk about his entire run in the USWA, and we'll just keep chugging along through 1993 and see where it takes us.